The trauma of being both a victim and a witness has been horrendous. The impact this has had on me can be summed up by one word: trauma. He targeted us because we were women and girls, vulnerable and easy prey.
Welcome back to our channel. A strange and terrifying story. A series of events that began in a small English seaside town where, just a few months ago, people strolled along the cobbled streets, listening to the sound of the ocean and the church bells ringing on misty afternoons. But then, something happened. Something that turned everything upside down in just a few days. From a peaceful life to scenes the people here never expected to see. Burning cars in the middle of the street, angry mobs smashing things in the night, and chants of hatred colder than the October sea breeze. What turned a peaceful town into a center of rage? What led to hundreds of people being prosecuted, many in prison, and a nation being plunged into a never-ending debate about freedom, truth, and fear? This is not just a story about a crime. It is a story about how modern society can slide downhill with just a small spark. And that spark sometimes does not come from a gun, it comes from a rumor. Hold your breath, because what you are about to hear is not fiction. It is the truth. And the truth is more painful than we can imagine. Axel Rudakubana, the name may be unfamiliar to many people, but at one fateful moment, it appeared in all the major and minor newspapers of the UK. Axel, 17 years old, was born and raised in Wales in a family of Rwandan immigrants. His parents were hardworking people, working tirelessly in the hope that their son would have a better life than the previous generation. The Rudakubana family lived in a modest housing area, not rich but full of love. Axel was an only child. He never caused trouble, did not smoke, did not party, did not get into school fights like other teenagers. Teachers described Axel as a smart, sensitive student, but extremely quiet, almost a shadow in the classroom. Almost no friends were close, except for the personal computer that Axel often stared at for hours. Someone once said that there was something distant in his gaze, as if he were not really in this world. Southport, where Axel's family had moved to a few years ago, was a peaceful seaside town in the northwest of England. The cobblestone streets, cozy cafes, and the gentle sound of the ocean waves every afternoon made it seem isolated from the hustle and bustle of the outside world. But in this seemingly peaceful town, on a sunny July day, something broke. Something that no one, not even those closest to Axel, could have expected. Axel's life before that fateful day seemed completely normal. He lived with his parents in a small, quiet house on the outskirts of Southport. They weren't rich, but they had high hopes for Axel. That he would be the first in the family to go to university, that he would be the bridge to a better future for the whole family. In his parents' eyes, Axel was a good son, quiet and obedient. That summer, the town of Southport celebrated the holidays in a lively atmosphere, with many special classes for teenagers, painting, sports, and even a Taylor Swift-themed dance class that attracted many students, including Axel. No one knew why he chose that class. Maybe it was out of curiosity, or simply because he wanted to hide from the crowd. The afternoon of July 29, 2024, was sunny and the air was fresh. Axel walked into the community center with his familiar backpack on his back. But this time, what he brought with him were not books or computers. Inside that backpack was a well-hidden dagger, and inside him was a storm silently raging. No one in the class that day knew that they were standing next to a mind that was both silent and dangerous to the point of chilling. That afternoon, pale yellow sunlight streamed through the large glass windows of the Southport Community Center, where a dance class was taking place, with loud music and the clear laughter of children. Girls aged 11 to 13 in brightly colored costumes were practicing their steps to a cheerful Taylor Swift song. The air was filled with innocence, as if nothing in the world could ruin that moment. But just a few minutes later, everything suddenly shattered like a mirror smashed with someone's bare hands. Axel Rudakubana, standing silently behind the group of students, suddenly stepped to the middle of the dance floor, pulling a long, shiny knife from his backpack. There was no alarm, no words of warning, just action. Sudden, fast, cold. The The first stab hit a girl who was twirling to the music in the chest, causing her to collapse on the spot, to the shock of her friends. Then Axel turned and rushed toward the two other girls who were running away in panic, striking without hesitation. Each slash was followed by a scream. Each step he took was a ripple of terror. In less than 10 minutes, the room was filled with chaos. Screams, cries, hurried footsteps running through the hallways, and the gasps of injured children lying motionless on the floor. A teacher rushed in to intervene and was injured in the shoulder while trying to restrain the seemingly harmless student. When the police arrived just 7 minutes after the first call, Axel was still standing in the middle of the room, holding a bloody knife, his face expressionless. No anger, no remorse, no words. It was as if the whole thing had been premeditated, and he was simply carrying out something that had been forming in his mind for a long time. The 3 girls died on the spot. 10 others, including students and teachers, were seriously injured, many of them hospitalized in a critical condition. The incident lasted less than 600 seconds, but the price the town and Britain paid was worth counting in years. A scream from inside the community center startled the neighborhood. An emergency call was made at 4:08 p.m. 7 minutes later, police cars with sirens roared in, shattering the seemingly peaceful atmosphere of the small town. As they entered the scene, the police had to walk through a hallway littered with blood and the sobbing of children shielded by teachers. And in the middle of the dance studio, Axel Rudakubana stood there, expressionless, still holding a bloody knife, not resisting arrest. The scene was so shocking that even veteran first responders could not keep their composure. The entire center was immediately sealed off. Forensics were called in, collecting every trace of blood, every footprint, and security camera footage. The murder knife was long and sharp, not something picked up by accident, but a deliberate choice. The victim's autopsy showed that the stab wounds were fatal, mostly to the chest and abdomen. A pattern of coldness and control that sent shivers down the spine of investigators. Not an impulse, but a premeditated act. The investigation was escalated to the highest level immediately after Axel Rudakubana was arrested. It was no longer an isolated incident, but quickly became viewed as an act of extremism, even terrorism. The next day, police searched the house where Axel lived with his parents. It was a small house in a quiet residential area on the edge of Southport, with a back garden that smelled of freshly cut grass. But inside Axel's bedroom, a completely different world emerged. On the study table by the window, police discovered a laptop with a web browser open in incognito tabs. It didn't take long for the digital forensics team to extract the data, and what they found stunned the entire investigation team. In a folder simply named Study Material, officers discovered dozens of PDF files, videos, and articles detailing how to prepare ricin, one of the world's deadliest poisons, a tiny amount of which can kill within hours if not treated promptly. There were also signs that Axel had searched for the ingredients on the black market, visited anonymous forums, and interacted with accounts that were extremist, antisocial, and espoused violence. The team expanded their investigation, contacting cybercrime and psychology experts to analyze his behavior. They discovered that over the past 2 years, Axel had spent much of his time online accessing hidden platforms where deviant views were touted as an escape from a rotten society. In recovered text messages, Axel wrote, "I don't belong here. I'm surrounded by fake people and a world that doesn't care about the truth." He once sent a link to an article titled, "Actions Are the Last Word." Axel's parents had no idea about the alternate world their son lived in. They said he rarely shared anything other than short answers. They didn't suspect anything, because Axel always came home on time, didn't get into trouble, and never caused a scandal. But to the investigation team, these details only made it more frightening. Inside the seemingly harmless teenager was a psychological bomb being silently nurtured through every line on the computer screen. The case file is growing, and with it a portrait of a young man radicalized in his own home, not by weapons or military training, but by toxic ideas planted bit by bit over the internet. Axel is not a madman, nor is he a spontaneous killer. He is the product of a process that many are increasingly calling digital radicalization. And the question now is not just, why did Axel do it? But how many other Axels are growing up in silence right among us? Immediately after his arrest and preliminary investigation, Axel Rudakubana was officially charged with a series of serious crimes: murder, conspiracy to murder, possession of documents related to terrorism, and biological toxins. The list of charges shocked many people, especially when the perpetrator was only 17 years old. Unable to keep him in a regular prison, the authorities decided to transfer Axel to a maximum security detention facility in Liverpool, which used to house the most dangerous criminals in the UK. From a quiet student, Axel was now officially a national threat. In the cold interrogation room, the light shining directly on the table, Axel Rudakubana sat silently. There was no panic, no remorse, no anger on his face, just a blank mask that would have puzzled even the most experienced interrogators. When asked why he had carried out the attack that killed 3 people and injured 10 others, Axel said only one sentence: "I wanted to send a message." The words rang out clearly, as if he had prepared them in advance. But when the interrogator pressed him further, what message? To whom? For what purpose? Every answer became disjointed. At times, Axel stared at the wall, repeating the same meaningless phrases. At other times, he simply shrugged, as if there was nothing more to say. The strange lack of cooperation, combined with evidence found on his laptop, made investigators suspect that something deeper was at work in the teenager's mind. A team of psychologists was called in urgently. They observed Axel's body language, his emotional expression, and even his response to deliberately provocative questions. Over several lengthy interviews, they came to a terrifying conclusion. Axel had not come up with all this on his own. He had not acted randomly. There were clear signs that he had been radicalized, slowly, silently, through harmful online content. And now he believed that he had not been wrong. On the contrary, he was the only one who had seen a truth that the rest of the world had ignored. Axel Rudakubana's case quickly became one of the most complex and closely watched cases of 2024. The authorities mobilized an interdisciplinary investigation force, combining criminal police, cybersecurity experts, and criminal psychologists to consolidate every detail. Digital data was meticulously analyzed. Axel's internet access history, the content of messages, videos, and images on his personal computer were all entered into evidence. In addition, testimonies from teachers, classmates, and neighbors, people who had contact with him, were also recorded.
I cannot give myself compassion or accept praise, as how can I live knowing I survived when children died? The trauma of being both a victim and a witness has been horrendous. The impact this has had on me can be summed up by one word: trauma. He targeted us because we were women and girls, vulnerable and easy prey.
The murder weapon, traces at the scene, and forensic details from the autopsy were added to the evidence sheet as the final pieces to complete the picture. Experts agreed that this was not a spontaneous act, but a calculated attack, carefully prepared both psychologically and physically. As the trial officially began, all eyes were on the Liverpool courtroom. The 17-year-old appeared in a prison uniform, expressionless and speechless. Outside the court, the crowd was violently divided. One side held banners calling for justice, the other shouted angry xenophobic slogans. On social media, a wave of hatred quickly erupted, not only aimed at Axel, but also spread to the immigrant community, people who had nothing to do with the case. Although the court claimed to maintain objectivity, public opinion was heavily manipulated by fake news, conspiracy theories, and incitement from far-right groups, turning the trial into more than just a criminal trial, but a public battle between justice and social prejudice.
Southport should not be defined by violence. For people to come into our town from outside of our town to promote violence using our town as a platform, that's not okay.
Naturally, we are vulnerable. I mean, there is youngsters, there is young kids who keep coming to the mosque, either to learn or to pray or whatever. And we don't want them to face something like that ever again.
Accordingly, in total, I sentenced Rudakubana to 13 sentences of custody for life, and a minimum term to be served in custody of 51 days and 190 days. It is highly likely that he will never be released.
When the blood was wiped off the gym floor and the headlines died down, what remained was a void that could not be filled. The victim's family still lived in excruciating pain, waking up every morning with the reminder that their daughter would never return. They carried the loss like an unhealed scar, trying to continue living in silence, still hearing the child's laughter echoing in their dreams. But they were not the only ones who suffered. The Rudakubana family had become shadows in their own community, shunned, whispered about behind their backs. Even though they did not carry a knife, did not commit a crime, they were silent sinners, condemned by their very existence. The case was not just a tragedy in a classroom. It was a wake-up call for the whole society. It raises a troubling question. When misinformation can spread faster than the truth, when online words can shape offline behavior, where is the line between freedom and danger? We can control behavior, but can we control what is spread online? That remains an open question.